People cry peace, peace when there is no peace. My name is Pastor Tom Arthur from Sycamore Creek, and I'm here with my four colleagues and friends and brothers, Pastor Luis from The Mix, Pastor Coye from Kingdom Life, and Pastor Curt from Crossroads. And we are in our second episode of Perspectives. Four pastors talk about race. We're four pastors who've gotten to know each other through congregations organizing for racial reconciliation. We've been working together for probably 3 or 4 years now, having monthly conversations, private conversations about race in America, race in Lansing, racism in our own churches. We've been doing that privately. And last night we decided, in light of the protests across our country, the clear displays of racism in the murder of George Floyd and so many others, we decided to take those conversations from being private to being public and to host them here on this podcast. Now, many of you who are watching right now will have just watched the Black Lives Matter call to action in Lansing. And you are coming over to watch this to see how four pastors respond to that. Here's what we want you to know. We want you to know that 2 of us have watched about 60 to 70% of it, and 2 of us haven't watched much of it at all. And so it is our intent for those of us who got the chance to watch part of it to respond a little bit in part right now. But we think that what happened was significant enough that we want to devote some real time, thoughtful time, and prayerful time to responding. And so we're going to spend tomorrow night on our next episode reflecting more deeply on what happened, what we saw happen in the Black Lives Matter call to action. But we know that that's on your mind and in your hearts and your spirit. I know many people from Sycamore Creek, many of the audience, many of my congregation were on that call watching it, and they want to know what their pastor thinks about what was said. And I was there for about 70% of it. I had to transition out of it to navigate and make some decisions about what we were doing with this. We decided to push this later so that you all could continue to watch that and then migrate over here. But I think if I were to sum up what I saw happen in the Black Lives Matter, I think we saw the tables turned. I think we saw Black people controlling the conversation and the narrative, and we saw a white mayor feeling very out of control, very out of control. And I think in that we saw people who are white, like me, watching the mayor perhaps felt extremely uncomfortable. And in that moment of feeling the discomfort of the mayor as a white person, I don't want to say I experienced what Black people experienced. In no way was what I experienced in my discomfort what Black people experienced. But white people in general, or the mayor perhaps, experienced the flipping of the tables, of not being able to control the narrative, of not being able to, not feeling prepared, not feeling like he knew what to answer, just entirely out of control. And we saw represented in that moment a symbolic representation of how the Black community generally feels, not being able to control the narrative of how their communities are being described, how their communities are being policed. Past that, there were a lot of things that happened in that meeting. I mean, the first part of it, a state of emergency, a state of healthcare crisis was declared by health officials. I mean, I don't know that that's ever been done before. A state of crisis about racism as a health crisis. Again, I'm not quite sure. And I think like what Angela said was that's, what does that mean? It means what we make it mean as a community. But I think that's a pretty significant piece. And then the piece that I saw as well, I saw Michael Lynn as a community representative of the community at many of the Black Lives Matter events that I've participated in. We saw him asking some questions, and we saw the mayor getting very defensive. And again, I think that was a symbolic moment of how the Black community often feels. The tables were turned tonight. And I want to talk more about it. I want to talk more substantively with my fellow pastors about what that meant. And they're actually literally like, they're hearing my reaction for the first time right now. Okay. We didn't even have enough time for us to talk about our reactions beforehand. They're hearing it for the first time right now. And they may not like Coye and Curt and Luis may not like what they're hearing me say. They may like resonate with it. I have no idea, because we didn't plan this response. We spent most of our time trying to decide whether we should go on the air or not, or whether we should like postpone, dive in deep, and we didn't want to leave you hanging. And so that's my overall reaction. And I think we saw the anger in the Black community, and at least a portion of the Black community, a significant portion.
Let's not just say anger. Let's not just say anger. Let's maybe frustration.
Frustration.
Yep. A little bit exasperated, tired, and not that anger may not be also infused in that, but
yeah.
Let's not give the image
actually,
that it was
I thought
angry.
Thank you, Coye. Michael Lynn was actually very composed through the whole time that I saw. Like, he was not an angry Black man. He was like a calm, like ice cube, and asking questions and making statements. I mean, he was certainly not an angry Black man.
He looked prepared.
He did look prepared. You're right.
He looked prepared.
He looked prepared.
And I'm one of the pastors who has not seen hardly any of it. I just caught the last few little minutes of some of the questions. And, per conversation that we had about this, it was said that the mayor was unprepared, and that was acknowledged from what I heard from you all in that meeting as they were having this dialogue. And so, yes, a little bit that I saw, you said Michael Lynn, right? He looked prepared, and the mayor did not look as prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I could interject a little bit, what you saw is a display of frustration, like Pastor Coye was able to say. There's a lot of frustration, and one of the things that really caught my attention was specifically when they were talking about the budget, and knowing that 0% of $0 are going to a citizen engagement. Which to me, just being able to hear that is completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable that we would not allocate money into the budget for citizen engagement. So if you don't have citizen engagement, you're policing of people you don't know, and that is crucial. And these are the things that we really want. That this is the whole reason why we're coming together, is to be able to address these systems, right? These systems that create oppression, and in the communities. And one of the things that really caught my attention in that, actually, Angela, I forgot her last name.
Waters Austin.
Yeah, Angela was able to say, when she was pushing back about allocating some of these monies. She basically said, she asked them straight up, are you going to allocate some of these funds? Are you going to do this? And he said, well, we got to consider the public safety. And she responded, we take care of our own. And I got to say, that's so true. In communities of color, when you go in communities of color, we have a fear of the police. I grew up, my father had a conversation with me and sat down with me and had the police conversation with me. So we never saw the police as our protectors, and I'm not even Black, right? So if my father had this You get what I'm saying? That my father, and obviously I'm Puerto Rican, so a lot of the Puerto Rican culture that we identify a lot, or not identify, but we resonate a lot with the Black struggle, because we also come from slavery in the Caribbean islands and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you know, I recognize that I have a little bit more privilege in this country just because I'm lighter tone. And yet, my dad still had that conversation with me. So I just can't imagine, you know, how the communities of color, and it seems like Angela was saying something that hit my heart that I knew is true, and I know that is true for many people.
Luis, something that struck me about what you said, and part of that conversation, was how the mayor continued to refer to the police as providing safety.
Yeah.
And that seemed considerably out of tune with everything I've heard in the conversation in the Black community about not feeling safe by the
Right.
and
Right.
and it seemed that he was unable to acknowledge that difference or that distinction in his language about safety.
Yeah. And the truth is, it's hard for you to understand something you've never experienced, Tom. That's just the truth, because the truth is, because he is who he is, he has experienced safety from police officers.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is his experience. His experience is that police officers provide safety for people.
Yeah.
But this is why at the Mix, I preach this. At the Mix, we say we need to sit with people that are different from us and hear these perspectives. Because if we don't, we are in a bubble and we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
We are in a bubble and we don't even realize it. And if we don't sit with people that are different from us, who have different perspectives than us, then what ends up happening is that your paradigm is what you judge everything. And this is the issue what we were talking about yesterday with police paradigm, right? That the paradigm that they function in, you know, protects a group of people and oppresses another group of people. And that's not an individual police officer's fault. It's a system that they live in.
That's a good point.
On some level, I think that's a good transition to what we were planning on talking about tonight, which is white privilege, right? Like we saw on display, or I saw on display, the white privilege of the mayor and myself, in our experience, that when the police show up, okay, we're good now. And in the Black community, when the police show up, that's not the reaction. And it struck me like really hard how the mayor was unable to articulate that. I mean, was he blindsided by that reality, that his language about police being safe, what that was saying to the Black community that was present there?
You could tell in the video, and I'm eager for Curt and Coye to watch the video, but you could tell in the video that it's upsetting. It was upsetting. He kept saying that, and it continued to upset the people of color, because that is not the reality. That's not our reality.
It escalated.
And it's unfortunate. Like I could, you know, for people that are tuning in and are saying, you know, are starting to think about this in political terms, this is the reality.
Sure.
This is not something to debate. This is the reality. The reality is that the communities of color are afraid of the police. That's the reality. If the police come and knock on my door, I'm a pastor. You know, I'm a pastor and I'm a community leader and I love the city. But if the police come knocking at my door, my heart's gonna start pumping. That's just the reality. I just want to make sure that people understand this. It's a reality.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't mind me jumping in here, I think that part of what we're hearing, and again, I haven't seen the video in its entirety, so keep that in mind. But part of what we're seeing in this is there is an element of truth in both people's perspectives. So for the mayor, and you know, maybe for Curt and Tom and those of us in our community, in our country who are white, when the police do show up, there is a sense of security that you immediately feel, because you feel like they're there to protect. They're there to make sure that if something is not right, they're going to put it right and it's going to be okay. And then Luis, you and I, you're right. The police knock on my door, they pull me over. personally, I may not start sweating. I mean, my heart is racing, and I think to some degree, anybody's heart is racing when you get pulled over. But in my mind, I do feel like I have to prove that I'm not a threat and that I'm not dangerous and that I have to prove that I'm innocent of whatever before, you know, I got to figure out how I'm going to prove that, because they're not going to approach me like I haven't done anything wrong. They're going to approach me with a skepticism that I have done something wrong. And I do feel that way because I am Black. Now, I'm not saying that every cop approaches me and thinks negative because I'm Black, but in my world, in my reality, my truth is that I have to prove myself innocent first.
I want to tell a story like about how this is white privilege on display here. Okay. When I got pulled over last, my heart didn't race, Coye. And
okay.
I actually got pulled over in my church parking lot with my son in the back seat of our car. And my white privilege in that moment said, I don't want my son to see his dad interacting with a police officer. So I just got out of the car, assuming that I could go back and have this conversation with the police officer out of earshot of my son. And so, you know, my heart was not racing. I thought, again, I didn't even think about it. I thought, I'm a grown man. I'm going to get out of my car. I'm going to have a conversation with another grown man. And maybe, I don't know, maybe because it was on my parking lot of my church, I felt more emboldened or something. But, you know, the minute I got out of the car, boy, the voice booming from that policeman to get back in the car, I was like, oh yeah, I need to get back in the car. And then when he came up to my car, he said to me, do you need to get your son into daycare? We don't even have a daycare at my church.
Wow.
And he was trying to interpret my getting out of the car charitably as needing to get my son into the daycare. And he was going to let me take my son into the daycare before he wrote me a ticket.
See,
that's white privilege.
And Arthur, Tom, I'm hearing that, and I can't believe it. Like, I literally, like, you know, you can't see it on the screen, but as soon as you started saying that you got out the car, my reaction was this. Because I'm like, I know. You know, when I get pulled over, I turn into the biggest Christian in the world. That's what I do. I say, God bless you, sir. How are you? God bless you. I love you so much. Christ is amazing. And, you know, I try to use my Christian privilege in that moment, you know. So
I think we got a video that Curt did such some sort of work to pull together. Curt was originally supposed to lead the conversation tonight.
No, this is good. This is much better.
And the tables are a little turned because I haven't seen this video. And when we were talking about it last night, you all were kind of ribbing me pretty hard.
Yeah.
White privilege for not seeing it.
So many people, this video went viral. Man, a week or two ago, a woman in New York walking through Central Park, in a bird watching area where you're supposed to have your dog on a leash, and she does not have her dog on a leash. So a man approaches her, who we find out is an African-American man, and asks her to put the dog on the leash, and that's where we pick up the video. So this is Tom's first time seeing video. So we get to see his live reaction to it. So that's kind of fun.
All right, here we go.
Would you please stop? Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in the Ramble, and there is a man, African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the Ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the Ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
All right, so Tom, I gotta call on you. Well, should I call on you first? Or you look a little perplexed still.
I don't know where to start swearing. I really don't know how to respond to that.
Look, I can't believe this is your first time seeing it. I cannot believe that you have not seen this video. Came out the same day as the George Floyd video. So I'm just shocked because for about 2 days, it was kind of like, the course what happened in Minneapolis overshadowed it. But for like 2 days, people were just like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this happened. And I cannot believe you knew nothing about this video until last night us talking about it. And that,
I feel like this is supposed to be
right
funny,
there.
but this is, that's, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. I've been busy like leading a church and trying to actually do like real racist, like reconciliation stuff in Lansing. And so, yeah, but my wife was incredulous that I was unfamiliar with this video as well. But the point is not really about like, the point is that this is like white privilege, like, right? Like this woman thinks, and who knows, like, she may have having one of the worst days of her life. Who knows, like what she's like, but again, like even that, like I'm putting myself in her shoes rather than in a black man who's not doing anything.
Nothing.
Tom, question for you. On your worst day, would you say something like that?
On my worst day.
On your worst day,
there's a
would
black
you say
man
something
threatening me and my dog?
Or telling him to put on a leash?
Oh, did she say put him on a leash?
No. He told her this is the bird watching part of the park. Your dogs have to be on a leash. So could you leash your dog?
There's so many layers of racism and history of racism in that video, and one of them is like this whole dynamic of that we've painted black men as predators, and particularly sexual predators with white women, and that has fueled so much of white male racism to protect white women from black men, as if they're a predator like that. And that's just like on full display in that moment. So, I mean, I as a white man, I can't, I'm on the top of the totem pole. I'm not like a white woman who is, I can't even put myself in her shoes because I don't ever worry about being raped. And that's what like our culture has shown. But again, what I think you see in that moment, you see the tables flipped of how black people feel when the police show up. They feel like that woman, and they're not she doesn't feel in control. She doesn't feel safe. The black community doesn't feel safe when police show up. You're seeing, again, like symbolically represented in that moment, the tables turned.
And I if I could differ from you for a little bit,
please do.
I don't think she felt threatened. I think she was just pissed that she got called out. There was nothing for her to feel threatened. There was nothing that she could say. He didn't have a axe or a gun, or he didn't have a knife. He had a pair of binoculars. He was bird watching. She didn't feel threatened. She used her privilege to weaponize the police against him. She knew her privilege. She understood it. She said, I'm going to call the police and tell them an African American
male
is threatening me.
Yes.
She knew that
She's using
by
a lot of
calling the
code
police,
language.
yeah, she knew that by calling the police and saying an African American man is threatening me, she knew it was over. And if he wouldn't have had his camera and recorded it,
Right.
That's an issue. When somebody, and then afterwards, this is not something that was displayed here, but afterwards she made a public apology. And one of the first things she says, I'm really not a racist. But I feel like that's a lot of people. A lot of people spew out a lot of racist things, but they're like, I'm not a racist.
So this is a classic white mistake. And I don't know, like, Curt, I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. Curt, do you want to explain the mistake for white people saying I'm not a racist? Because I know.
Tom, can you go back to the floor? We can see all shit at the same time. Can you do that?
You do it on your own.
Oh, I do it on my. Oh, okay. Because I'm looking at y'all.
There's a little button in the top right corner that says gallery.
Oh, look at that. There we go. Perfect.
There you go. All right. Curt, why should white people not say I'm not a racist? Why should every single white person claim to be a racist?
Well, that's a good question. And now I feel like Andy Shore, I'm on the spot. No, but this is relevant. This is relevant because I'm literally talking to a guy in our church about this right now. So racism, as the four of us have defined it, a good definition is prejudice plus power. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just that she was prejudiced. It's not that she just said, oh, you're a black person and you're dangerous. It's that she intuitively knew that if she called the cops and labeled him African American and she sounds white, she intuitively knows that there's a power structure there. So there's prejudice and power, which is part of that's what racism is. But anyways, I guess to your point, Tom, we live in these waters. We breathe this water. It goes hand in hand with white privilege. Every white person, you can trace your benefit lineage. You can trace, hey, my grandfather GI Bill, and we know that wasn't equitable. You can literally do a family tree of privilege. And so, in our country, if slaves were owned 100 years before the Constitution was even written, it is baked into, we live in a racist society. And so we want to individualize it and remove ourselves from the problem. But racism isn't an individual problem as much as Luis keeps saying, it's a societal problem. And so in these big power structures at play. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's a couple of my thoughts.
Yeah, we're pastors here, so I always got to interject scripture, okay? To me, racism is a sin of favoritism. It's a sin of favoritism. You have a favorite group of people, and you protect that group of people, and so on and so forth, and there's power dynamics in that. And favoritism, the Bible forbids it. The Bible forbids it. James chapter 2, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, must not show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing the fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, you stand there or sit on the floor by my feet. Have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? And I'm going to skip to verse 8 that says, if you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers.
You know, I'll go a step further. I mean, we can talk about the sin of favoritism, and we can use like the James passage and talk about somebody coming into the church. But let's face it, neither one of these folks were in the church. They were outside the church. So let's just deal with the fact that she broke the 9th commandment. Okay, she bare false witness. She lied. All right,
Right.
All right, so she flat out lied in order to, what I would suggest, to try to show this black man, you're videotaping me, you're telling me what I need to do, I'll show you. So whether she intended for him to go to prison, get beat up, killed, that's irrelevant. I can't prove what her hope was as far as her, like what she wanted to happen, but I do feel like she would, I want to get back at you for telling me I can't have my dog just out here doing what I want my dog to do, which is run freely. So she bears false witness. Exodus 23 verse 1 says this, says, you shall not bear a false report. You shall not bear a false report. Do not join your hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. Now, while she wasn't aligning herself with someone in this case, she was using an expression, language. She was using a tactic that she knew would draw the police in. Because when I did some more research on this, it is true that if a distressful call is made and the person who's making the call of distress sounds like they are in danger or threatened or in trouble of their life, when the police show up, that phone call is probable cause to actually go and pursue or take into custody the individual who is being accused, because the call says distress. Her voice elevated. You hear the dog squealing in the background because she's trying to talk at the same time and she's trying to corral her dog. She is insinuating that she is actually in danger, and all this man is doing is watching her. So in this sense, she is actually with malicious intent, lying. All right. Verse 7 of that same chapter in Exodus 23 says, keep far from a false charge. Keep far from a false charge. This is all a false accusation, and it's done, I think her biggest motivation, I don't know that she wanted him to go to prison. I don't think she wanted him to die. I don't want to speak that. I don't know about that, but I do know she used a phrase, an African-American male. And someone said to me, she's done this before. I can't even say she's done it before. I can tell you this, whether she did it before or not, she knew it would work. Because the police showed up. They just were both gone by the time the police showed up. And he had a video that he shows later that gives all the context of what happened. And it made me think this. Last thing I'm going to say, then I'll be done for a minute. Watching that video, even though I knew, like, unconsciously, sometimes people, you know, they make up false accusations for the sake of their argument or their defense all the time. When I watched that video, seeing it play out, I begin to ask myself, how many times has a police been called by somebody who was white on somebody who was black or minority, and they act like they are in distress, and the police show up and they take me away or someone who looks like me because of a phone call, and there wasn't a video. And that was a part that, man, I really began to worry about my kids and even my own self. Like, you know what? Because if it just takes a phone call, and she is clearly lying. And
so I want to tie this back in with what we were talking about at first with this conversation with the mayor, and the mayor regularly referencing this safety when in relation to police. And in that video of this woman, we see that played out. The white woman thinks that if the police show up, she will be safe. And I'm pretty sure that if you are black watching that video, you think if the police show up, that guy better get out of there.
Yeah.
Because of what you just said, Coye. And so my this is something that my wife has done with other mothers in our neighborhood, because we are friends with several Black families in the neighborhood, and they set up just recently, kind of in response to all this, calling it a motherhood watch. And it's basically like a network of households that the Black families and kids in our neighborhood know are safe. And that
That's
the
crazy.
white families and neighbors will, if there is something that happens, we will come out and we will intercede for the safety of the Black children in our neighborhood. And that's what the mayor was missing tonight. That there was a group of moms sitting in my driveway trying to figure out how to keep the Black kids safe from the police. Recognizing our own white privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's what the mayor, that was what the mayor was missing in his language.
And let me say this in defense of the mayor. And I have not seen the whole thing. But sometimes when you are privileged, you don't recognize it because it's just how you've always lived. I was out in the suburb one time at a Lansing Christian basketball game, and pretty much everybody in there was white except for a few of us. And at one point, because I was standing next to the opponent's team's children's section or student section, the AD comes over and he says, "Hey, you have to move because you're not a part of our school." And I'm like, "I gotta move, like this is a good seat." Like, you know? And so I look at the guy who's taking pictures for Lansing Christian. He's a white guy and he's got a long camera. And I said, "Well, he's not moving. Like, I know he's at Lansing Christian." Now, in the AD's defense of that particular school, he didn't know that guy was from Lansing Christian. He just thought he was a regular cameraman. But in my mind, I'm like, I gotta move. Like, so after a few minutes went by and some people from Lansing Christian parents came over to be like, "What's going on?" Because they knew I was a pastor. I'm not causing a ruckus. At that moment, I just decided it was better for me to move because I didn't want the police called, and I didn't want to deal with that. When I told my good friend, who is my assistant, is assistant to me here, he's white, same age, we grew up together. When I told him that guy asked me to move, he looked at me and he said, "Well, what did you move for?" And I said, "Well, because the AD was telling me I couldn't sit here." He said, "Man, you bought a ticket. Ain't no assigned seats in this. It's a basketball gym. If I buy a ticket, I'm sitting wherever I want to sit at because I bought a ticket." And as he's telling me, how he feels, I'm like, dude, that never even crossed my mind. All I could think was, if I don't move, he's gonna call the police. Which, by the way, the AD, he called the police. He called them. And by the time they got there, of course, they just stood across the gym. And as long as I didn't create no ruckus, it was fine. And they never came over to me, but that's what I was trying to prevent. But my friend and brother looked at me and said, I paid a ticket, give my money back. And there is no way I'm responding like that. Not in this all white rural community. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's a thing, like that Black men have to, choose their battles, right? Like that was not a battle you wanted to fight.
Nope.
You got to be very strategic. So, as we've been talking, we keep getting like more and more people on Facebook, but I sense we ought to wrap it up tonight and come back tomorrow with all of us having watched it, paid a little more attention to all the details of it.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Curt.
No, I was gonna say I appreciate what you said, man. That's just so powerful. I mean, we've been having this conversation for 3 or 4 years, and it just amazes me when I listen and I hear your guys' stories time and time and time again. It's just because I would have felt a sense of empowerment. I really would have. And I would have like fought for justice, it with never a shred of the police showing up. That would be the last thing on my mind. And because I know you so well, it just blows my mind that someone would, see you as a threat, but they do because you wear darker toned skin than I do. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I think, Curt, going back to what you said last time, man, I think this is a time for the church, particularly, to just lament. You know, this is a time. Like I'm hearing this, and just coming out of that Black Lives Matter conversation, and being able to come here and just be able to speak about all of this is so heavy.
Yeah,
This
man.
is so heavy, man. My wife yesterday was telling me, because she's real critical of me because she loves me, and she was saying, hey, Luis, you should not be as goofy because it's a serious conversation, right? And I took that to heart because I'm like, baby, you're right. This is serious and heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the personalities, us four, because we know each other and we can laugh about certain situations and our personalities come out. But the truth is, man, people are dying and people are hurt and people are afraid and and it's all very heavy. What I experienced today with that conversation, with the little bit that I was able to watch with the Black Lives Matter, it was heavy. And we need to acknowledge that and lament that. And Curt, I appreciate that word that you gave us yesterday about lament because it's so true.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
You know, I want to add one more thing. Let us also, I'm reminded, because I've heard on a number of occasions as a Black man, the more I spend time with my brothers in the faith who are white, who really want to get to know me and really want to hear my experience and can appreciate it because they hear me talk about it as their friend or brother. And that is oftentimes, you know, my friends will apologize for white people, for police officers, for racism, for the systemic racism that we experience. And oftentimes, because it's not your experience, you're like, I don't even know how you deal with that. Well, it's the only experience that I know, number one. And so you deal with it because it's all you know. I don't know anything different. You know,
right.
If you try to make me a slave today, I might resist because I know what freedom feels like. But I don't know what it feels like not to, at times, have to move and live and navigate myself through life the way that I do. But I will also tell you this. It is also this same type of oppression, systemic racism, struggle that, man, brings me to my knees. And I think that God also uses it to mold our races, I mean, people of color, to mold us to where not only do we depend on him more, but I think in some sense, it brings out, it sounds horrible, but it brings out like the best of who we are too. Like it brings out some of the best of who we are. Some of the greatest achievements made by African Americans or people of color throughout, you know, America's history was due to the fact that we were under this oppression and you had to work harder, you had to be twice as good, twice as smart, and then, but it all of that was inside of us. And as much as I hate to say it, God uses evil for good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to, you know, the white church in general doesn't lament. You know, a lot of our multicultural work at the church, it's like, well, where do you guys like cry out? You know, where do you guys like bring don't you like unload all your baggage from the week? And we're like, oh no, we don't really do that. You know, learning to, in all honesty, I have always been jealous of the worship at churches of people of color because it does look more like the Psalms. There is more adoration and praise, and there is more crying out, and it's just more of an authentic experience because of what you're saying, Coye. But if you're privileged and you just kind of walk in with all these other privileged people, you just kind of hear a good message, and you kind of go. But there is no shouting, there's no crying. It's just not our experience.
It's not.
I don't even want to say this out loud, but what you said, I'm going with what you said. There's something beautiful. You know, let me say it this way. Is it possible, and I've heard a person of color in seminary say this, they pretty much said, our struggle is real. We got to fight for justice. On and on and on. Yes, yes, yes. We're, you know, but he said, but don't miss that we get to relate to Jesus. Like, people don't. And I'm not going to preach that. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I heard that in a very black context in my, urban cohort seminary class. I was like, wow, that's right. That's what I'm missing. I want to be I want to cry out too, but man, I don't got nothing to cry about.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're right, because I don't really envy worship in churches that are predominantly white. I'm not jealous of that at all. In fact, we worship in church like you all do at the Spartans football or basketball.
Yeah, exactly. I say that all the time.
So it's in you. Like you can express yourself like that. It's just you've been taught that we don't do that in church. This is holy, sacred. We don't act undignified like that. And when you got privilege, you don't have to. We act undignified in church like that, and we let our hair down and we shout because we like, Lord, it is hell down here on earth.
Right.
And the only time we get to really express ourselves is in worship, and we look forward to the day we get to do this for eternity. So we're going to practice real hard for the next 90 minutes. Because when we leave this building, all bets is off.
Coye, last time I went to your church, I was in tears and I came up for the altar call and everything. So I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up tonight. You've heard some perspectives tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow night for some more.
We're still there?